Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhang dhammang sanghang namasami. So I've recently been teaching overseas, over the sea, Tasman Sea, and I've had lots of people also asking lots of questions, and it seems, I would say, quite a few of them, especially with dealing with meditation, could be easily understood, answered, if people keep in mind, if they remember that the Buddha teaches two kinds of meditation, calm and insight meditation, which then need to be put together in some form. Because first of all, if you don't keep that in mind, I think the kind of default is always to calm meditation. Most people just assume that meditation is sitting quietly, watching your breath. We see the image of the Buddha, he's sitting there. I guess he's focusing on his breath. I don't hear him breathing, but I guess he's focusing on his breath. And for many people, that's the maybe the first thing they learn, the first exercise, focusing your attention on a meditation object like breathing. But if we forget that there's another aspect to it, insight meditation, then many times we just default, or we just stop at calm meditation. Of course, the Buddha did encourage, he did point out the benefits and encourage the development of calm meditation, focusing attention on the breathing, so the mind calms down into even to great depths of calm, referred to as the absorptions or jhanas. And the traditional explanation of the path of practice mentions those development right to the fourth absorption even, and then the mind is turned into, we turn the mind towards insight meditation. It's contemplating the Four Noble Truths. That's the simple version, but there's also extensions to that. Remember the contemplation, the anupassana. Remember that from the instructions on development of mindfulness. Kaya anupassana, Vedana anupassana, Chitta anupassana. Those who speak Pali. The contemplation of body, feeling, states of mind. But the Buddha, while the Buddha complimented or encouraged the development of calm meditation, he didn't say much about the dangers. Maybe, I don't know, just speculating, but maybe the people in the Buddha's time, they were already, they already had some experience of calm meditation. I don't know if they, at least it seems to be that meditation was quite well known in Buddha's time. At least the calm meditation, that was the whole basis of the Brahmanical tradition. That's where the Buddha learned calm meditation from his two first teachers. But the Buddha himself, being somewhat of a I guess you say, a curious person, or I don't know, maybe serious person. To him, it wasn't enough. One of the effects of focused attention, calming the mind, is that the hindrances are suppressed. Remember that? Yeah, to reach each absorption, the 5 hindrances need to be suppressed, and they're not overcome. They just are temporarily in suspension. The sensual desire, ill will, sleepiness, and restlessness, and doubt. It needs to be suspended in order for the mind to be really focused and really calm. And the overall effect of that is that you can fool yourself into thinking that I've attained something. I don't know how many times I've been fooled by that. Sitting in the forest in Chiang Mai up in northern Thailand, and just sitting there huffing and puffing away for hours and hours a day. And eventually, even my mind calmed down sometimes. The mind calmed down, and then so quiet, no greed, no aversion, no delusion. Hey, that's the definition of nibbana. I'm there. But of course, as soon as I thought it, the mind gets really excited and disturbed, and oops, well, maybe not quite yet. But I didn't realize that this is the calm mind is beneficial, but it has these effects too, these side effects, if you like, which can be very distracting, disturbing, even distract you from the spiritual practice. Unless you remember that, oh, right, when the mind is calm, that's the preliminaries, that's a good foundation for insight. I've heard many people, even recently, say that they just think that, you just sit down, watch your breath, the mind calms down, and then wisdom will arise by itself, they say. And no, it doesn't, unfortunately. Just by calm meditation, wisdom does not arise by itself. Unless you have insight meditation, then wisdom arises. First of all, there's a define wisdom in the Buddhist teaching. Wisdom is a deep realization of impermanence, unsatisfactoriness, and no permanent self. Whereas when you're focusing attention, your mind calms down, and you do gain some understanding, I would say, of how your mind works. As the mind's calming down, you can see the activity of mind much more clearly. It's not going so fast, and slows down a bit. So you can see, the kind of thoughts that are happening in your mind, where some of these thoughts come from and where they go. They trigger off other thoughts, and you proliferate, and memories arise, and you grab hold of them and make them into a long story. So you gain some kind of understanding of how the mind works, but you don't get a really deep insight into impermanence, unsatisfactoriness, and no permanent self. If you'd like a sort of worldly understanding, or we'd say, technically they say something like mundane wisdom, if you like. That the mundane is just the, understanding the nature of things in a general way, like understanding education. But the supermundane is the insight into impermanence, unsatisfactoriness, and no permanent self, which would, of course, also mean that one has realized the first stage of awakening. But in the practice, just remembering the practice of insight meditation, it's a matter of cultivating it to deeper and deeper levels. But the calm meditation, for some, especially people who are very good at it, sometimes they even use it as an escape. Who wants to see their greed, aversion, delusion? Huh? You see, peace, calm is much more attractive, you see. That's part of the nature of the self. The self is based upon permanence, satisfaction, and self. So it tries all kinds of devious means to prevent you from seeing it. The self has its own, its own protective mechanism, its own defense mechanisms to preserve itself. So sometimes if your mind is, becoming a little bit more clear, noticing impermanence, maybe you fall asleep. Mind is very tricky. Try all kinds of means to avoid seeing the truth. But if we understand that in the right context, and the basis of insight meditation is contemplation. This can also be a little bit tricky, I realize, because contemplation initially relies upon some degree of thought, of thinking. See, and if your mind is really calm, it implies your mind is not thinking, right? Just a blank state, calm. So you have to kind of withdraw from that, that state of calm and begin to use your brain again. But ideally, it's this activity, mental activity of thinking, is supported by some level of calm. Not just your usual way of thinking, kind of scattered and a lot of emotional reactiveness to it. There's a certain level of, you can say, kind of methodical, careful contemplation within the right framework of, the foundations of mindfulness, for example. We can contemplate anything. I mean, the word contemplation is, I think it's used by philosophers to contemplate the nature of things and, think about all kinds of fantastic things. Maybe it's used even by scientists to, contemplate the nature of the universe. But the Buddha pointed out, so what? Figure out the nature of the universe and you're still suffering. The most important theme of contemplation is the Four Noble Truths. Unsatisfactoriness, its cause, cessation, and path. That's all you have to know, actually. There's that sutta about the handful of leaves, that one, yeah? And the Buddha was wandering in the countryside and he stopped somewhere and he picked up a handful of leaves and he asked the monks, which do you think is more, the leaves in the forest or the leaves in my hand? Well, they're very intelligent monks. So they said, of course, those leaves in your hand. He said, well, that's what I tell you. What I know is like the leaves in the forest, that's what I know. But what I tell you is just like this handful of leaves, because that's all you need to know. Suffering, cause, cessation, and path. That's all you have to know. Of course, you have to know that very well. Right to the end, cessation of suffering, you have to know that as a direct experience right to the end of it, not just as a theory in the book. Or if that is, there's various themes the Buddha gave, various themes to contemplate. The Four Noble Truths is one of them, but also to contemplate directly, the impermanence, unsatisfactoriness, and no permanent self. And practically, we do this in the context of this body-mind. So what you can know directly in this body-mind. I mean, impermanence outside, you're still perceiving it through your senses, which are distorted. Sure, you can see, the leaves changing color and, impermanent, etc. But what's really important is to be able to see that in your own body, to be able to bring that home into the own body then as a direct experience. This is where we have the attachment to self. We attach to the body as a self. I don't think many people attach to the leaves as themselves, huh? The leaves in the forest. I know they're pretty and that, and I live in Australia for a long time, so eucalyptus leaves are very close to home, but I even missed them when I was in New Zealand. Where's the eucalyptus trees? They did have some pine trees there too, so it was more like Canada, but lots of Japanese cedar trees that have been planted there in the monastery. Anyway, contemplation begins with some degree of thinking, and some people, of course, they're very close to thinking, so it's very hard maybe to make that transition from thinking to contemplation. Contemplation is the direct experience. So thinking can set up the mind in the right direction, what to contemplate. Contemplate the nature of this body, like the kaya anupassana, the body contemplations, the 6 body contemplations, the breathing, the 4 postures, the bodily activities, the elements, 32 parts, and the corpse meditations. And depends upon, each person has their own, you can say, preference for attachment or grasping. And each of these exercises, they can provide a different approach. Some people might find some of them easier than others. I still haven't memorized all the 32 parts yet. Well, you don't only need to, actually you just need to be able to observe very, very deeply just one of them, actually. I don't know if I should mention this story, but when I was in Chiang Mai in Thailand, I also, it was a bit boring after a while, just observing the breathing. So I began to try to experiment with other meditation themes. It's mentioned in the Pali Canon. Practice of metta, practice of the 32 parts of the body. But some of them were a bit too confusing for me, too abstract, I guess. I couldn't see the heart, I couldn't see the liver or kidneys or whatever. So, but I thought I could work on a nice skeleton maybe. So I wanted to see a nice white clean skeleton. So it just so happened that somebody was a doctor, came to ordain temporarily. So I just mentioned that to him. He said, "Oh, my friend's in the anatomy department at the hospital. I can arrange for him to take you and see a white skeleton." I just wanted a nice, clean, white skeleton, you see. But I guess he didn't get the message. Because when I got there for the appointment, he took me through the autopsy room. All these corpses laying on the tables. I didn't want to see it. My mind I just couldn't, just automatically just looked away. I didn't want to see it. Look at the floor. I just want to see a nice, clean, white skeleton. No blood, please. And actually, it's very hard to find a clean, white skeleton because skeletons are not actually naturally clean and white. So we had to go through all of the autopsy room right to the very far end corner to find the white skeleton. So they just had one in the whole hospital, I guess. I don't know, but so he left me there. He said, "Okay, there it is. I have to go off." And so there, looking at the skeleton, and my eyes began to rove around a bit, and nope, don't look there. Don't look there. Keep looking at the skeleton. Then I had to get out on my own. Couldn't avoid it. But it was really interesting, just that revulsion. Just don't want to look at a dead body. I don't want to look at, an ugly, cut-up body. I just want to see. There's just a natural instinct to avoid it. So it's a matter of, contemplation allows that possibility. If we have a bit of some degree of calmness in the mind, and ideally then there wouldn't be those emotional reactions to it. It's just the 4 elements, you can say. But it takes some development of this ability to contemplate. The development of calm meditation, as I mentioned already, but Ajahn Chah says, just calm enough. Some people, they make a big point of trying to develop calm to these various levels of absorption, jhana or something or other. And it gets very, even heated arguments about, what is exactly these different levels of absorption. Ajahn Chah, just a master of simplicity, just said, just think of it as different levels of calm, that's all. Forget about all the other little details of, got to have these factors and those factors and stuff. Just different levels of calm. So first of all, most people just experiencing calm for the first time when their mind is really quieter than normal can be quite a revelation even. The mind can change. And then it was then investigating the different levels of calm, kinds of calm. Sometimes, you think the mind is calm enough for insight, and then you try to bring awareness to the sensations in the body, and you notice some part of the body which is, gives you a little bit of, doubt or worry or something or other, then your mind spins off again. There was one time I got this strange symptoms when I was in Switzerland. Kind of bodily aches and things, and like most things, I just endure it, because most of these things just go away after a few days. But this persisted, for weeks, until finally one of the other monks said, "I think you should go to the doctor." And so I'm tough, I can, but anyway, it persisted. Okay, I go to the doctor. So he took some tests. He said, come back in a week. I don't think he didn't express any emotion about it, but in that week I had to wait. I had cancer, I had rheumatoid arthritis, I was dying, I went through every illness in the list. And then finally I went back to get the results, and he said, "Oh, no problem," he says, "you've just got pneumonia." I said, "Pneumonia? People die of pneumonia." He said, "Not you, you're too young for pneumonia, you die of pneumonia," I said. He said, "You're really lucky it's not rheumatoid arthritis, because there's no cure for it," he said. Just pneumonia. But I didn't even know about arthritis. But I knew pneumonia, people die of it. My grandmother died of pneumonia. And I thought, so I almost had a heart attack when he told me. He said, "Oh, no, and it's really simple. You just take this, a series of tablets for whatever it is, antibiotics or something or other. It goes away." But in that week I waited, I could have used some more calm meditation. Or at least chamomile tea anyway. But it's amazing what your mind can get up to, when you when you have these these strange things happen in the body, and of course, we think we know this body, we live with it for all our life so far, and we think we know it, but all kinds of strange things can happen. So if your mind, you practice with some degree of calm, and maybe you can observe the rising, falling of the breath, no problem. But when there's a little bit of a cough or, whoops. I've got lung cancer now. Picked up some bug from New Zealand, maybe. Then you don't know something, don't know what this symptom is, or this particular reaction of the body, and then your mind spins off with all kinds of things. So back to the calm again, back to the calm, back to the breathing again. And basically the practice is to keep those two in harmony. Like I said, too much calm, you don't notice anything happening. I mean, some people who are good at developing calm meditation, they don't even feel their body anymore. Their body just feels, just no sensation left in the body. So blissed out, can't feel anything. And maybe sometime it is helpful to, maybe you need a holiday sometimes from the body and mind. But But you have to keep in mind that, it's not the full practice yet. It's only half of Buddhist meditation. It's only with insight meditation that one can really realize the cessation of suffering completely. With calm meditation, it's a temporary abiding in peace only. Which, like I say, sometimes you need a break sometimes, but realize it's only temporary. And of course, the contemplating impermanence, unsatisfactoriness, no permanent self is not an easy matter. The self kind of rebels from it because it's a threat to the whole nature of the self. But with the support of calm, some degree of calm, the mind doesn't react so hysterically. So sometimes you can get a glimpse of it. Like the breathing process, just observing the breathing, as it's, we rely upon the breathing as our kind of support for life, but sometimes observing the breathing is arising and passing. And is it going to breathe in again? Yes, breathing in again, out again, in again. When's the last breath? But as we observe the breath more carefully, with a bit more calm and clarity, more mindfulness, those two qualities, they begin to kind of cut through, as it were, the delusions, the images we have of the body, the images we have of ourself and the mind. You begin to see more clearly just the way things really are. So like the contemplation, from some degree of thinking about it, thinking begins also with having the knowledge, know what to contemplate, how to contemplate. For example, in the Four Noble Truths, most of us, many people, they get stuck on the first Noble Truth, I think. So that it becomes, it's a bit of a challenge to observe the nature of unsatisfactoriness. It expresses itself in all different ways, besides the physical discomfort and mental turmoil. And there's all kinds of different ways, and maybe you can accept some of them. You can kind of, after a while, you can say, "Oh yes, I've seen suffering. Yeah, I've heard so many people say, oh yeah, I know all about suffering. Yeah. But have you observed the nature of you could die also, that kind of suffering? Well, I think I'm ready for it. I think I'm ready for it. Yeah, you think, yeah. But when it's coming your way, when you're observing the aging body and it's going to end in one way, not getting any younger. Then as the older one gets, the more I hear about people passing away. Where I was in New Zealand, they have a lot of memorial trees planted. So I go around and look at I usually read the kind of tree it is, but occasionally I see the dates of the people who have passed away. Surprisingly, how many are younger than me? Actually, not many of them were older than me, actually. But the nature of impermanence, this is the way things really are, impermanence. We're fooling ourselves by refuting it, trying to ignore it, and that just causes more frustration, more suffering in our life. When you get open to it, just contemplating about the meditation on unsatisfactoriness. I mean, the Buddha was quite a what do you say? Wouldn't say a rebel. He was quite a brave teacher, very courageous teacher. Talk about suffering, wasn't he? Why did he talk about suffering? Why didn't he talk about just love and light and the glory of God, and you know, you believe in me, you go up to heaven, and you know. No, he talked about, no, you have to investigate the nature of unsatisfactoriness. So why are we here anyway? We could be meditating on heaven, couldn't we? It is one of the meditation themes, isn't it? Devas and heavenly realms, I think, is one of the meditations. But I think the reason the Buddha did that, I mean, that was his meditation too. That's what set him off on the spiritual path. Why do people have to get sick and old and die? Yeah. That's what set him off on the spiritual search. And that's probably why everybody ultimately comes to spiritual practice. You meet those unanswerable questions, and you need to seek a spiritual solution. Yeah, if you just say, well, okay, why do people get sick? You know, because there are microbes around, because there are bacteria around, you know. Okay, so get some antiseptic then, and you're safe. Not quite so simple. There's an existential answer to that. If you really ask the right question, why do people get sick? Because this body is impermanent, conditioned, just held together by various conditions. When those conditions are out of harmony, you get sick. Maybe it's easy to understand with the, you know, in the Ayurvedic system of India. You know, I think there is the three whatever they call them, humors or something or other, you know, bile, phlegm, and blood or something. You know, and it's just disharmony of these that cause you illness, you see. So they recognize, you know, the body is subject to impermanence. It's always changing, and you know, the Buddha recognized that even, you know, changes of the season make it obvious here, you know. But you know, in Switzerland they have a phenomena. I mean, I know the German name, but it's a hot wind from the south, whatever it is, the föhn. I think the French call it sirocco or something. But it's just this when there's a high on the north and a low on the south or something, then these winds come through the Alps, you see. And as they go through the Alps, they get friction because they blow through the mountains. So you get this hot wind blowing from the south, and it's very, very warm, and it's a very, you know, major change in pressure. So some people get really, really, very bad headaches and mood changes, and it didn't affect me too much, but some people really suffer from it. And it's just, you know, just a change in pressure happening. But I mean, it's very obvious because you know, the wind's really strong and hot from the south. Then it usually ends with a rainstorm. The rain from the north winds out all the time. There was one time it was blowing so strongly that our 4-story monastery up in the mountains, 4 stories high, was shaking, you know. And some lady, she was so frightened the house was going to fall apart. She ran outside, creaking, but it's a wooden house, so it's made to move. But she got really frightened about it. I guess she lived in a stone house maybe before. But contemplating, you know, impermanence, I mean, that's a reasonably safe one, I think, for many people. As long as you don't, I guess, you bring it into your own body, then it becomes a bit more personal. But you know, contemplating impermanence, things are changing. Yes, the sun rises and sets every day, and yeah, it's changing. The leaves are changing, and all this. But then you try and bring it home again. Ajahn Chah used that the phrase, you know, you have to, how do you say, Yom Kaumana. You have to bring it inside again. You can see it outside visibly, but you have to bring it into your own body. See it within this body-mind complex. Then it really has some significance. That's what will allow you to penetrate into the truth of things and allow you to let go, to release your grasping of this body. And if you see your body just like the leaves in the trees, what's there to hold on to then, huh? Yeah. Pretty leaves. I the other day, I don't know, a while ago, I collected this very nice eucalyptus leaf, some very nice colors on it. So I picked it up and I took it to my room and I put it on my desk. Very, very artistic expression on the leaf. The next day it was all shriveled up and I guess I should have put wax on it or something. How could I save it? How could I preserve it? How can I preserve this change? No. But it's just like a instinct, I guess we have. We don't want to recognize real change. We can't accept it. Yeah. That's why it requires some contemplation. Moving from the thinking about it. We read the books about it, we hear the talks about it, we know, okay, impermanence, but they move to a direct realization, a direct insight. That means you have to calm down the thinking about it and move into direct seeing then. So that's where the calm meditation is helpful. You start off with the thinking about it, impermanence and unsatisfactoriness. You do the chanting about, there's Purta chanting, inspiring Purta chanting tonight. Nothing about suffering, huh? Morning chanting then. Yeah. Jati piduka, jara piduka. No? Yeah, this was a jati pi. Birth is suffering, old age is suffering, death is suffering. Yeah. But you understand that first, you read that maybe, and then you can contemplate it. Maybe it's not so understandable in Pali, but if it's translated into English, and sometimes, maybe early in the morning before your mind gets really, into the thinking mode, when you're still only half awake, it penetrates deeper, Oh yeah, old age is suffering, right? Yeah, I remember that sometimes, yeah. Some days I'm not so energetic, yes, I remember that. But then your thinking mind kind of covers it over and you remember when you were younger, stronger, more healthy. But, when your mind isn't so active and isn't so into thinking mode, maybe that realization goes a bit deeper. But as we develop the contemplations, around these themes and with regard to the body, the feelings, the states of mind, just like trying to contemplate unsatisfactoriness. The average person, the kind of worldly person, is still very much addicted to pleasant feeling, right? And that's the whole nature. The nature of the self is to look for pleasant feeling, avoid unpleasant feeling. That's our kind of, our whole kind of framework of life, our purpose in life. And a successful person is a person who has the most happiness, right, and the least suffering. So we already have that as a kind of a foundation for our way of looking at the world. And then it comes to, you hear about, contemplate unsatisfactoriness. But it's not very fun. So it's not going to be very easy. Our whole habit patterns, our way of perceiving things is to avoid unpleasant feeling. Only if the deeper levels of calmness of mind, you maybe can break out of that habit tendencies we have to always look for the pleasant. But even in developing meditation, people enjoy the calm meditation, very, very pleasant. So it's hard even to shift out of that. To put aside the calm meditation, the peaceful calm, and investigate unsatisfactoriness? Are you kidding? Not tonight. Maybe tomorrow morning when I really do feel unwell. But not tonight, please. But really, you just have to look around. I mean, there's a whole different variety of expressions of unsatisfactoriness. You don't need to sort of rub it in or create it or kind of manufacture it. You know, just observing this various. I mean, we that chanting we do. You know, not getting what you want is unsatisfactory. You know, being associated with the unpleasant is unsatisfactory. You know, once you study and learn these things, and you look around. Oh yeah, right. You know, I'm not getting what I want right now. You know, okay, it's not really a major catastrophe, but that is a little bit, that's also a nature of unsatisfactoriness. And sometimes one of those particular, you know, forms of unsatisfactoriness might really stand out. Yeah. Other times, you know, well, it just seems a bit abstract, you know. Dying is suffering. Dying is unsatisfactory. Yeah, well, I'm not dying, you know. I mean, I can't, not so relevant anyway right now. No, but I might die on the way back to my kuti, but walking up those steps. But right now, everything's comfortable. You know. But associated with what I don't like, it's hot in here, 26 degrees. Bit too hot for me. Where's the fan? Oh, right there. Forgot to turn it on. Suffering is just a click away. I mean, happiness is just a click away. I have to suffer. But of course, that's contemplation, right? Yeah. So if you know what the various forms of unsatisfactoriness are, I mean, you just have to contemplate and maybe even recite that verse, you know, and you know, ultimately the 5 groups of grasping. Well, you got lots of choice there. Great variety of different forms of unsatisfactoriness, and you know, usually we look at the ones which, of course, we wouldn't look very far. We don't want to look at unsatisfactoriness. We just look at the ones which are, you know, maybe we can tolerate with reasonable amount of satisfaction. You know, I'm not dying right now, so okay, right. You know, that's tolerable. I think I'll contemplate that because I'm safe. I think. But you look at the other, you know, some of the other ones, and maybe there's some which are, you know, they are kind of, you know, kind of pricking at your comfort zone. Not getting what I want, you know. It can be a frequent theme, you know, not getting what I want, or associating with what I don't want. Yeah. And then, you know, you look at it, maybe you have to kind of reflect upon it, bring it up into your consciousness, and try and sense into it a bit more. Not with just your thinking about it, but trying to open up to it. What are the things that I'm associated with and I don't like, that keep kind of, you know, kind of irritating me? Boy, I could make a book out of that. If I really got into it, whole book. But when you investigate it, contemplate, you know, you begin to open it up, becomes deeper and deeper, and realize, oh my goodness, is there any peace in all this? Is there anything that I'm associated with that doesn't irritate me? Some form or other, or some time or other. And then maybe, you know, you get a much more deeper appreciation, unsatisfactoriness. Yes, it really is the truth of the way things are. I can kind of fool myself and ignore reality as much as I can, but every once in a while it comes, it kind of piercing through or breaking through. So contemplation, I mean, it's important to be able to bring this up. And basically, you know, as a developing calm meditation, calm enough. Too much calm, nothing to contemplate, just peace. If there isn't enough calm in the mind, we just end up thinking about it. You know, kind of a superficial thinking or conceptualizing about it. And maybe we, you know, people who are identifying with their concepts, they think they understand it. You know, I was telling somebody about one of the monks that I knew. You know, he came into the monastic life very young, and I've met some of these Thai novices too. You know, who come into the monastic life as a novice, as a very young man, 12 years old, 15 years old, and then they just stayed in the robes. And then you ask them about suffering, and all they could do is recite the evening chanting, you know. I remember on a bus in Bangkok, and there's a monk. We're both sitting at the back of the bus, you see. Monks get free seats at the back of the bus, you see. Even the old ladies get up for us. I feel really embarrassed when the old ladies get up for me. But and this monk turned to me and said, "Oh, you became a monk. Why you became a monk?" And I said, Suffering. He said, "Oh yeah, I know suffering. Yeah, jahati piduka, jara piduka." I said, "You don't know suffering, man." Just me being here in Bangkok in this heat is suffering, and this is your home, you know. So he knew the chanting about suffering, but I wouldn't say he actually knew what suffering was. You see, but, not that I'm an expert, but I'm getting close to it. The longer I live, closer to death and old age, you know, it's creeping up on me, so I can't avoid it forever, even much as I've been trying. But contemplation allows us to, you know, slowly bring it in. I mean, okay, maybe it even, you know, thinking about it sometimes. Oh, suffering. Oh, yeah. I was contemplating about, you know, when I went, before going to Thailand, I studied Buddhism, so I knew about the Four Noble Truths, you see. So then I thought, I'll go to Thailand. It's going to be really a depressing country because it's a Buddhist country. They know about suffering there, you know. So it's going to be really a grim country. See? But I went to Thailand, and it's called Land of Smiles. I think, are these people fooling themselves? Supposed to know about Buddhism and suffering, yet they're smiling? Are they for real? You know, what I realized is a profound wisdom there, because not only do you know what suffering, you see, this was new to me as a Westerner, suffering. Who talks of suffering in the West? You know, you'll be the real wet blanket of the party if you talk about suffering. People ask you, how you doing? Fine, you know. You don't actually tell them how you're feeling, because it would really put them off. Do you really want to know? Anyway, what was I? Yeah. But then you know, not only if you know about, the Thais know about Buddhism, not only about suffering, but the path out of suffering. There's a way out. See? And I know one man he used to come to the monastery regularly, elderly man who came to the monastery and helped the monks off in the morning, you know, prepare the food and things. And one day I came in and he was there, and I just thought I'd, you know, be conversational. So I said, "Oh, how are you doing?" He said, turned to me and he said, "I'm suffering." And I kind of, and then he started chuckling to himself, you know. I thought, is he just joking or what, you know? So then I asked him, "What do you mean you're suffering?" He said, "Well," he said, I have Salok Sangvet, which is what? Existential sorrow or something or other. Yeah. But now I know the way out of it," he said. I come to the monastery, try and make merit, try and do some meditation, he says. So you can acknowledge his suffering because he knows the way out. But if you don't know a way out, like most people in the West don't know a way out of suffering, they don't know the path, the Eightfold Path out of suffering, so they can't even acknowledge it, can't even admit it. It's a sign of failure. But if you know the way out, you say, oh yeah, I'm suffering, yeah, and I'm working on the way out, I'm working on the way to find a solution to it. Haven't quite realized it yet, but at least I'm working on it. At least there's a possibility there anyway. And as the Buddha said, suffering is the nature of life, unsatisfactoriness, fundamentally. It's not without its joys, not without its happiness and pleasures, but in the end, it's unsatisfactory because they're all going to come to an end. How much joy you have in life, it's going to come to an end. So if you recognize that, you can acknowledge it. Oh yeah, and I know the way out of it. To let go of the grasping of self. Let go of this habit tendency to always chase after pleasure and be frightened of unhappiness or unsatisfactoriness. Just a feeling. It arises, passes away, arises, passes away. What's the big deal about it? Just like the sun rising and passing and setting in the daytime, Pleasant feeling arises, passes away. Okay, bye-bye. Be back again tomorrow at breakfast time, right? Maybe, you better not be too confident here, maybe I'll fall down the stairs and break my leg and won't get to breakfast, maybe. yeah. Or maybe you sleep in. But once you realize that there is unsatisfactoriness, but there is a way out too. When somebody asked the Buddha what he teaches, he said, "I just teach suffering and the cessation of suffering. Don't forget the cessation." And even though it is work, sometimes it is work to realize the work on the cessation of suffering, but that has a final solution. Just trying to ignore it, trying to get away from it, chase away from it, run away from it, ignore it. There's no final solution. You're just playing a temporary game of escape. It'll come around again till we reach the final solution. So we have the possibility. The Buddha gave us that possibility. So might as well make use of it. Well, we can before we forget it. Next lifetime, you never know. We might forgot it already. Now's the chance. So hopefully you'll be able to pursue the practice. We still have the time and we have the energy and the interest, and then we begin to see the results for ourselves. So gradually our suffering, which can seem so, sometimes insurmountable, but when you do the practice, it gradually begins to kind of fade away and not be such an overwhelming burden on us. You see the results for yourself, and it is possible. It takes time and effort, but it is possible. So it's up to us to put it into practice, see for yourself.